In this timeline, Daniel Bryan has resigned to WWE and saves Kofi Kingston from the almighty Bobby Lashley after Lashley retained his WWE title at Money in the Bank. So Daniel Bryan has signed to Raw and his target is crystal clear. So on the following night, he makes it even more clearer what he wants, as he says, "If I want a shot at redemption, then I need to beat the WWE Champion and then defend it, then I can get my hands on the Tribal Chief at Survivor Series. That's my sole focus at the moment, is to beat him." And if Bryan wants to achieve his goal, he has to win a number one contenders match between himself and the former champion Drew McIntyre in the main event of the show. And it's an unbelievable contest. They show why they each deserve to fight for the WWE title. But Bryan's relentless. He won't stop until he gets the win, which he does, as thanks to Jinder Mahal, he hits a running knee to punch his ticket to face the champ who runs the camp, who comes out and assaults Daniel Bryan. He even puts him through the announcer's table. He's been softened up, so will Bryan have what it takes to become WWE champion once more, or will he just be known as a B+ player? Well, it's time for the WWE Championship match, and it's a classic affair. Lashley uses big moves to dominate the smaller Bryan, so Bryan has to use his technical prowess to take down the bigger man. He locks in submission to try and wear and tear Lashley down, and it's working. Bryan is starting to get the upper hand. He's throwing everything he can to topple Lashley, but all it takes is one move and Lashley is back on top, and eventually comes down to one key moment. Both men are in opposing corners, and they run at each other, and Bryan clocks Lashley with a knee, but he knows he needs more, so he hits another, and another, and another. Then he locks in the yes lock, and Lashley has nothing left, so he passes out. Daniel Bryan has done it. He has become WWE Champion, and he is one step closer to a rematch with the Tribal Chief. But who will his first challenger be? As there's a fatal 4-way no more contenders match the following night, and it's between the Viper Randy Orton, Drew McIntyre, Bobby Lashley and AJ Styles, and it comes down to two. It's between one half of the new Raw Tag Team Champions Randy Orton and one half of the former Tag Team Champions AJ Styles. And with Bryan watching on, Orton hits an RKO onto Styles to get his chance to get his 15th World Championship. But to do that, he has to overcome a dragon who is desperate to retain. As the following week, Daniel Bryan opens the show and is in the ring as he says, "Randy, I know you're a Viper, I know you're going to do anything to get the job done, but I will do anything to keep hold of my championship, because if I don't retain, if I can't retain, I don't know when, if ever, I get another shot at Roman Reigns. That's my end goal, because I need it. I need to beat Reigns. It's the only thing I have left off my career that I want to achieve. So Orton, this is your warning for Extreme Rules. You're getting the greatest professional wrestler on this goddamn planet, Bryan Danielson." Bryan has laid down the law. He's all business and refuses to be treated like a B+ player any longer. But now it's time for Daniel Bryan's first championship defense against the Viper. And Orton is calculated. He takes Bryan down, and just like Lashley did at SummerSlam, he's dominating Bryan in a far more vicious way. He systematically wears down Bryan with each move being precisely where it targets. But Bryan's fight is unwavering, and not only that, but he can be just as vicious. Bryan even manages to apply a yes lock. Will Randy tap? No, he fights out of it. They get to their feet, and Orton looks for an RKO, but no, Bryan counters. He then lines him up and connects with a running knee. Bryan has done it. He's retained the WWE Championship and is only one more championship defense away from facing Roman Reigns. But who will he have to defend his championship against? Well, the following night, Bryan is in the ring and says, "When I won my first WWE Championship, it was because I cashed in my Money in the Bank briefcase. And I won my second WWE Championship because John Cena chose me as his SummerSlam opponent. So for Crown Jewel, I want to do the same. And with gracious permission of the General Manager Adam Pearce, I am glad to announce that my opponent has not only deserved a right for this title, but also started off my journey here on Raw, because at Crown Jewel, it'll be me versus Drew McIntyre." It's an enormous announcement from Bryan, who asks for McIntyre to come out and he obliges, and we get a stare down before their rematch. However, this match is all about respect, and it's shown within the ring as both men give it their all. McIntyre has the strength advantage. He hurls Bryan around at any chance he can get. He even dives onto him, but Bryan's agility and quick thinking in the ring is almost unmatched, and he starts targeting McIntyre's leg, and he won't let up, and locks in submissions targeting it, but McIntyre isn't a quitter. He fights, and he picks up Bryan, but his leg gives out under him, and Bryan takes full advantage and nails a running knee. Bryan has done it. He retains his championship once more, but his next stop is the reason why he came back. The message has been sent. a rivalry drenched in history. And leading into Survivor Series, it's full-blown warfare wherever you turn. It's chaos on Raw, it's chaos on SmackDown. And leading the charge is both world champions whose hatred towards each other is on full display. Leading into Survivor Series, neither man has the advantage, neither brand has the advantage. But who is the better champion? Who is the better superstar? Is it still Roman Reigns? Or can Daniel Bryan finally overcome the odds and defeat the Tribal Chief? Well, the match is on and both men's chemistry is off the charts. They dive onto one another in the early going of the match, but Reigns' brawling nature is paying off on the outside as he manhandles Bryan. He even powerbombs him onto the announcer's table along with throwing Bryan into the ring post. Reigns is in control. It's looking bleak for the American Dragon. That is until he hits some calculated shots to the side of the skull of Reigns, which dazes him momentarily, which is enough for Bryan to start turning the tide of the match. He's on fire. Nothing can stop him until Big E comes out with the Money in the Bank briefcase. Is he going to cash in? Well, before we get our answer, Reigns nails a desperate chair shot onto Bryan to cause a disqualification. But Big E chases him off. But will he cash in on Bryan? Yes, he does. He covers Daniel Bryan to try and end his suffering, but he kicks out. Big E is distraught at this. He knows Bryan is hurt. However, he knows what he has to do, and he plants Bryan with a big ending after showing a sign of respect to him. No one can believe it. Big E has taken his opportunity to become WWE Champion, and Bryan limps to the back. Thus, we don't see the leader of the Yes Movement all the way until the Royal Rumble, where the man himself returns at number 30 to reinsert himself into the main event scene, and he makes it down to the final two. It's him or Brock Lesnar, who lost out on becoming WWE Champion for Big E early in the night. But Bryan is obviously more fresh, and he takes full advantage of this, and he wears down the beast, and with one swift motion, Daniel Bryan wins the 2022 Men's Royal Rumble. Everyone is ecstatic, but who will he choose? His mortal enemy Roman Reigns, or the man who took away his WWE Championship, Big E? Well, on the following night, with the rivalry between Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns, the biggest WrestleMania main event ever is announced. So I have the choice to choose my destiny for WrestleMania 38, but we all have integrated history. Me, Beige, Brock, Roman. So why don't we make the biggest WrestleMania match ever? As on night one, Roman and Brock, you two can go at it for as long as you want for the Universal Championship. Then me and Big E will do the same for the WWE Championship, and the winner of both matches fight to crown a new, undisputed champion. How does that sound? Sounds like a plan, Bryan. 2 out of the 4 competitors are up for it, and soon after we find out that Lesnar and Reigns are both up for it as well, but there's still one more stop for WrestleMania. The Elimination Chamber, and to test their skills against one another, Adam Pearce announces their tag team match between all 4 competitors at the show. So can they coexist? As although Bryan and E have a gargantuan respect for one another, Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar do not, and it breaks down immediately as Lesnar F5s Reigns. No one is surprised. He then walks out, leaving the tag match behind, and due to him being the legal man, the babyface duo pick up the win, but Bryan fires a less than friendly warning shot onto E as he says, "Just because I respect you and your work doesn't mean I like you, especially after what you did." Bryan has made a statement, and just like Lesnar did, he leaves the corpses behind. And now the chaos reaches a fever pitch. All 4 men fight for momentum leading into the show of shows. Although on the go-home SmackDown before the biggest show of the year, Reigns stands tall over everyone else. And on night 1 of WrestleMania, Big E and Daniel Bryan kick off the show, and the contest is in contention to be one of the best WrestleMania openers of the past 2 decades. It's got it all. Big time moves, dives, unbelievable feats of strength, and a ton of physicality. And after 20 minutes, the match is reaching its finale. Big E has Bryan in position for the big ending, but Bryan fights out of it, and with E stunned, Bryan runs and obliterates the WWE Champion with a running knee, and Big E is now a former WWE Champion as Bryan becomes the champ. But can he hold on to it past WrestleMania? As on the next night, it's time for the main event. Daniel Bryan, the new WWE Champion, taking on the man who retained his Universal Championship against the Beast, the Tribal Chief, Roman Reigns. And during the early portions of the contest, it's just a fight. The animosity between the 2 athletes has reached its peripeteia, but Reigns is too strong, so Bryan starts to use his speed and agility to his advantage. He goes 100 miles an hour until Reigns shuts him down with a brutal boot. And similarly to the previous match, Bryan gets powerbombed onto the announcer's table and thrown into the ring post. It's not looking good for the American Dragon, but he won't stop fighting. His body refuses to quit. Reigns even nails a spear, but Bryan by the skin of his teeth survives. And Reigns lines up for another, but Bryan moves and there's a ref bump. But Bryan doesn't realise as he nails a running knee and sprawls into the cover. Although there's no count, he can't believe it, but one man can. As in the main event of WrestleMania, Gunther debuts and lays out Daniel Bryan. He then walks past the Usos as a nail smashes onto Bryan. It's an absolute disgrace, and Reigns covers him. 1, 2... No! No one can believe it! Bryan survives, but he's fighting on sheer spirit as he groggily gets to his feet and is finally put down by Reigns with one final spear. Bryan fails again, but this time it's all thanks to one ring general. Well, on the SmackDown after WrestleMania 38, Gunther is in the ring and completely decimates his opponent in his in-ring debut. He absolutely obliterates Cedric Alexander in almost every way. It's getting hard to watch, and one man agrees as Ludwig Kaiser comes out, a former ally turned foe, or so people think, as it looks like he's gonna come down to the ring, but then he stops. Everyone looks confused as when Gunther plants Cedric with a powerbomb to pick up the win. Kaiser walks to the back. But then Gunther chucks Cedric out of the ring, and Kaiser unbelievably brings out a bloodied Bryan. No one can believe it, other than Gunther, who just laughs. Kaiser then plants him down with the ring general, saying, "So all of you are wondering why I assaulted and screwed the quote-unquote greatest professional wrestler on the planet. Well, it's quite simple, although quite complicated for those who root for this swine. He cannot, I repeat, cannot hold the most prestigious championship in the world. He's unworthy of dethroning Roman Reigns. He's unworthy of calling himself the greatest professional wrestler alive, because he hasn't beaten me. And until you do, I will personally ensure that the greatest professional wrestler becomes the greatest professional loser." It's a stern warning from Gunther, and he walks up the ramp, plants Daniel Bryan with a hellacious powerbomb, and leaves the carcass behind. And with that, we don't see Daniel Bryan for months, and whilst he's gone, Gunther dominates. He defeats Ricochet the following week to become Intercontinental Champion, and proves to everyone that he may just be the best wrestler on the roster. He fights week after week, and even wins a qualifying match for Money in the Bank, with still no Daniel Bryan in sight. That is until... Daniel Bryan is at Money in the Bank, and he has just screwed the ring general. Everyone is stunned. He starts brawling at Gunther and takes him out the match. And backstage, once he gets separated by security, he screams, "You robbed me of 3 months of wrestling, and you robbed me of beating Reigns. You took everything from me, so I'll take that championship from you. Then I'll go and become a triple champion when I finish my story and beat Reigns like I should have fucking done at WrestleMania." Things are getting heated between the two athletes, and this carries over to the following SmackDown, where Daniel Bryan issues a challenge as he has a backstage segment and says, "So Gunther, you have a lackey that took me out of action, so I want him in the ring right now." And Ludwig Kaiser responds. He confronts Bryan and says, "By orders of the ring general, to ensure that this challenge is met with the best action, I will not accept your challenge this week. Because next week, when I can train to disprove you of being the best wrestler in the world, that will be when our match takes place. But it's not just a regular contest, no. Because if I win, the ring general Gunther will choose the stipulation for your match. But if you somehow win, which would never happen in a million years, you would get to choose." How does that sound? Sounds good, Kaiser. It's a huge announcement by Kaiser, which is made official later on in the show. But before then, Gunther gets his revenge. He blasts Bryan with a lariat along with a powerbomb. Bryan is softened up for Kaiser, but can the ring general's assistant succeed? Well, Bryan is clearly nowhere near 100%, and Ludwig Kaiser is dominating the match. Every time Bryan tries to come back into the match, Kaiser shuts it down. But Bryan's resilience is undeniable. He won't quit, and he eventually gets an opening and starts to fight back. And it's Bryan who starts dominating the match. He showcases that he's prepared for the ring general, and eventually he plants Kaiser with a running knee to end his suffering. And with Gunther watching on, Bryan announces the stipulation of the match. "Gunther, I know exactly what stipulation I want. The match that'll truly prove who the best professional wrestler is. It's a test of endurance on top of everything else. Gunther, our match at SummerSlam will be a 60-minute Iron Man match. An absolute bombshell has been dropped. The two best wrestlers on the planet are gonna slug it out for an hour to prove who the better professional wrestler is. And the following week, there's added stakes to the matchup, as there's a promo segment between the two ahead of their dream match with Bryan saying, "Gunther, if I can't beat you this Sunday, then fine. Not only are you the better wrestler, but I won't fight Reigns until I finally beat you." Great. You know, even though you aren't the greatest professional wrestler, you do agree to the sanctity of this great sport, and for that I respect you. I respect your journey, but the American dream dies when I defeat you. It's another tense segment between the pair, but it doesn't go to blows until SummerSlam, and they get the main event of the show. Gunther, the reigning, defending Intercontinental Champion, against the leader of the Yes Movement, Daniel Bryan, in a 60-minute Iron Man match, with the winner at the end of the marathon holding up the Intercontinental Championship. And the match is underway, and it starts out as a technical masterclass. They trade submission holds to try and wear and tear the other down as early as possible, although neither will tap, and Bryan knows he has to pull out all the stops if he wants to call himself champion at the end of the night, so he starts diving onto Gunther like there's no tomorrow. He's trying to overwhelm the giant Austrian, but then as Bryan dives for the third time, Gunther catches him and plants him with a powerbomb onto the apron. Bryan's back is broken in half, and Gunther isn't done. He throws him into the ring and clocks him with a lariat. Will Gunther get the first fall? No! Bryan kicks out, and Gunther accepts this fact rather calmly, and then starts booting Bryan in the head, which awakens something in him. Thus the trade-off is on. Neither man will yield. They burn into warriors through sheer combat. If Gunther chops Bryan, Bryan kicks back, and eventually it spills to the outside of the ring, where the brawling escalates and escalates, to the point where Gunther redecorates the announcer's table and has evil intentions. He picks up Bryan, but he slips out, and he tries to pick up Gunther. However, his back crumbles under the pressure, and Gunther knows Bryan's weak points and targets it. He suplexes him off the announce table, then he tries to put him back on the table, but Bryan counters and puts him on the table, and Bryan has a chance to take out the ring LLL, and he does just that. He leaps onto Gunther, and they shatter the announce table, but they're both out cold. Neither of them are moving, and the referee counts them both out. It's still a draw, and there's still 25 minutes left of the classic, but it might go 2-2, as both men are still on the outside, but at the count of 9, both men jolt back into the ring, and the match continues. However, Bryan's back starts to get the better of him, so he has to rely on his strikes and endurance to survive Gunther's wrath. And with one chop, Gunther's sheer dominance begins in the final stage of the match. He hits a big time splash onto Bryan, and that's not enough. He locks in a half Boston Crab targeting the back, but Bryan just won't quit. Gunther even manages to connect with the most devastating lariat ever connected in pro wrestling, but that isn't enough either. Gunther is growing more and more frustrated, so he hits another splash. Bryan kicks out. Gunther can't believe Bryan is continuing to survive, so he gets desperate and unbelievably hits his own version of the running knee on Daniel Bryan, and it looks like Bryan is finished as Gunther hits a powerbomb, but Bryan kicks out at 1. And with the kick out of the century, Bryan gets a second wind. He fights and fights, and the match is coming to a close. Both men are in opposing corners. Gunther tells Bryan to fight, and Bryan flips the bird. Both men are ready. Everyone is on their feet, and they run at each other, with Bryan clocking the ring with a knee. Time is running out. This is it. This is Bryan's last chance to get a fall. But Gunther kicks out at 1 as well. Bryan can't believe it. Then the bell rings, and there is no winner. Bryan can't believe it. He was so close to victory, yet so far. He stands in a broken mess. Then Gunther gets to his feet, grabs the Intercontinental Championship, and gets back into the ring. It's a tense moment yet again between the pair, but Gunther acknowledges Bryan, and he walks away. But when do we next see the leader of the S Movement? Well, Daniel Bryan is here. He's back in WWE, and he's back in the main event of Clash at the Castle. He helps Drew McIntyre fend off Jey Uso, who tries to screw McIntyre, and they brawl all the way to the back, although the assistance would be futile with a debuting Solo Sikoa screwing McIntyre out the win. And on the following SmackDown, we kick off the show with the leader of the S Movement himself in the ring, and he says, "Oh, it feels good to be back." And what would have made it all the better is if Drew McIntyre won the WWE and Universal Championships. But I suppose it just wasn't to be. I tried to help, but Solo Sikoa decided to debut and ruin the festivities, didn't he? And you know, I'm getting sick of the Bloodline running roughshod over this company. So Roman, come on out. Let's cut the head off the snake right now. Bryan lays down the challenge, but it isn't answered by the tribal chief as the wise man comes out to a chorus of boos as he says, "Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Paul Heyman, and I am the wise man for the absent tribal chief, Roman Reigns." And even if Roman was in the building, what makes you think that you deserve to speak to the tribal chief? You have yet to even pin him in every singles match you two have had together. Not even in a tag match could you pin the all-powerful Roman Reigns. But I'll throw you a bone, as on behalf of the tribal chief, he'd like to see if things have changed since your last singles contest. So at Extreme Rules, you will face the Enforcer, Solo Sikoa. And if by some miracle you beat him, you'll get a match with Roman Reigns. But just know, if you choose to accept this deal, your life as a performer, as a wrestler, and as a father becomes hell. Paul, if I can't get my hands on Reigns, then you're right. My life becomes a living hell, because I will not rest, I will not stop until I beat him and take away the power he holds over this company. And Heyman doesn't even respond to this, he just leaves. Bryan is confused, but the crowd isn't, as Solo Sikoa sneaks into the ring and completely blindsides the American Dragon. Sikoa is making an immediate statement to the WWE Universe that he's a vicious protector. He completely annihilates Bryan, he even puts him through the announcer's table. Bryan has been back for less than a week and he's already been taken out. And the following week, Bryan is irate, he's seeing red, he storms out of the ring, stands in the center and screams, "Solo! You think you could attack me from behind like a coward and get away with it? No. You don't get to do that. I'm not going to be a plucky underdog anymore because I'm Bryan Danielson, and I've been proclaimed as the best in the world, and you're going to get the best out of me because Solo, I accept the match for Extreme Rules." Bryan isn't messing around, the crowd still adore him even with a more serious attitude, and surprisingly the man comes out and says two words, "You're on." The match is made official, both men want it, and it's Solo's first test as an enforcer. So it's time for the special singles contest between the David of the match, Daniel Bryan, and the Goliath, Solo Sikoa. And Bryan is strong out the gate, he flat out fights Sikoa, but all it takes is one strike and Sikoa is in firm control. He's completely dominating Bryan. Everyone is shocked at the performance of the Bloodline's enforcer, but Bryan won't give up without a fight, as with a few well-timed shots to the side of the skull, Bryan gets an opening and he takes it. He gets Sikoa on the outside, and he even hits a running knee, which takes down the enforcer for the first time in the contest. But as he tries to get him up, Sikoa clocks Bryan with a knee, and Sikoa's domination continues. He even looks to put Bryan through the announcer's table again, but Bryan counters and he sends Sikoa through the announce table. Solo is in a precarious position. Bryan throws him in the ring and is looking to end the match with a running knee, but as he's running, Sikoa catches him and nails a Samoan spike. It's unbelievable. Solo Sikoa has just defeated Daniel Bryan. The crowd is stunned. Everyone is stunned, aside from the Bloodline, who stand tall over the corpse of the Yes Movement. So now Bryan has integrated himself into the Bloodline saga once more. Although he isn't the main protagonist, as Kevin Owens, Drew McIntyre and Sheamus all have their issues with the Bloodline. So at Crown Jewel, Bryan's core contribution to the story is taking out Sikoa during Reigns' match with Logan Paul. And Bryan is next involved in War, as at War Games he is one of the side protagonists in the Bloodline story, as he alongside 3 other warriors compete against the Bloodline. And it's a car wreck, although Bryan once again sits on the sidelines whilst the heartbreaking finish takes place. So on the SmackDown after Survivor Series, Bryan lets everyone know his thoughts on him being relegated to a side character, as he says, "When I came back, I wanted to finish my story against Roman Reigns, not to be a background character going into war. So at the Royal Rumble, I'll rebound after losing to Solo Sikoa. I'll rebound from being an extra to the main lead. And then at WrestleMania, Roman Reigns, your stranglehold over this company dies along with your reign." It's stern words from Bryan. He's done with his career stagnating, but can he back up his words? Well, one man questions Bryan's integrity as the Intercontinental Champion Gunther comes out and confronts him, as he says, "Bryan, whilst we all know how good you were in the ring, your performances have been below par recently. So I have a question for you. What are you going to do about it when the Ring General wins the Royal Rumble?" Well, firstly, that ain't gonna happen, sunshine. And secondly, like I just said, I'm not gonna sit back and allow other talent to shine, because their time is up and my time is now. Quoting John Cena now, I see. How will he help you when he's off in Hollywood wasting his career away, throwing this great sport away? Because one thing I took after my match with him almost a decade ago is to hustle, to be loyal to my fans, and to have respect for my opponent, even if they're a piece of shit like you. It's a heated exchange between the pair, but can either of them emerge as the Royal Rumble winner? Well, at the show, Bryan has a near impossible task. He has to go from number 1 and win the Rumble. But who is number 2? Well, that would be the Ring General, Gunther. It was teased on SmackDown, and now they start the Rumble. The crowd are on their feet, and the bell rings, and the match is underway. Bryan and Gunther trade strikes with each other, but neither man will yield. And during large portions of the contest, both men are connected to each other. It's as if they're gonna last the full match. Both men try to eliminate each other, but neither can succeed, and eventually gets down to the final 4. It's between Daniel Bryan, Gunther, Cody Rhodes, and Solo Sikoa. And Bryan is teetering on elimination. Solo Sikoa tries to get him out, but it doesn't work. And Bryan has an opportunity and gets a small measure of revenge on the Bloodline as he hurls Solo over the top rope and eliminates him. Everyone is ecstatic, but the happiness soon turns into horror as Gunther grabs him and hurls him out. Daniel Bryan fails to win the Rumble. He was so close yet so far. He's absolutely deflated as he walks to the back. But he has one more chance, as Cody Rhodes announces he will be only challenging for the WWE Championship, which makes Adam Pearce announce an Elimination Chamber No More Contenders match to face either Sami Zayn or Roman Reigns at WrestleMania for the Universal Championship. And due to his performance in the Rumble, Bryan earns himself a qualifying match against none other than Shinsuke Nakamura. It's a dream match on free television, and it's an absolute classic. Both men show why they deserve to be in the match. Nakamura brings the strong style, and Bryan brings the technical wrestling, although in the end, it's a strike by Bryan that does the job, as if a running knee. Bryan punches his ticket to the Elimination Chamber. It's his last shot to get at Roman Reigns. And at the Elimination Chamber, Bryan has to overcome Drew McIntyre, Kevin Owens, Rey Mysterio, Karrion Kross, and AJ Styles. All 6 men have history with the Tribal Chief, but who will win? Well, McIntyre is on a rampage. He eliminates Rey Mysterio and Karrion Kross, but then AJ Styles cuts him off with a phenomenal forearm, and Styles clash combination to eliminate the Scottish Warrior. However, as soon as he does this, Bryan comes out of nowhere and blasts Styles with a running knee, and he's gone. We're down to 2. Who will win? Who will face Roman Reigns, Kevin Owens, or Daniel Bryan? Well, they're going at it. Both men are desperate to get their hands on the Tribal Chief on the biggest stage. Owens even manages to hit a stunner, but that's not enough, and he's looking for a powerbomb, but Bryan gets out of it, and with one last running knee, Bryan punches his ticket to face Roman Reigns, who demolishes him after the match. So leading into the show of shows, Daniel Bryan and Roman Reigns' rivalry reaches a boiling point. Whilst Cody and Roman talk, there's no more words to be hashed out between the Yes Movement's leader and the tribal chief as they just fight. No one can separate them, and on the go-home show before WrestleMania 39, Roman Reigns stands tall over Daniel Bryan. And with two athletes close out WrestleMania 39 Night 1, can Daniel Bryan finish his story? Can Roman keep his reign? Well, the match is underway and it's a very physical affair. Bryan is all business. He only cares about beating Reigns and becoming champion. He dived onto him at several points as well, but Reigns is still dominant. He smashes Bryan into the ground until he draws blood, but it doesn't matter how much blood Bryan has lost. He'll keep on fighting and even manages to connect with a running knee, but Paul Heyman distracts the referee, so Bryan goes for another, and as he's lining up his target, Solo Sikoa screws him out of the biggest win of his career. He gets Samoan spiked, Reigns hits a spear, and just like that, once again, Daniel Bryan fails to finish his story. So where does he go from here? Well, on the Raw after WrestleMania 39, Bryan is officially drafted to Raw, but before his promo segment later in the night, he has a backstage interaction with the new WWE Champion Cody Rhodes with him saying, "Congrats Cody, I'm glad at least one of us finished our stories." Thank you, Bryan. And hey, if you want a shot on my title, just give me a time and place and I'd be happy to give you that opportunity. Thanks Cody, but I need to earn it. It's a brief interaction between the pair, but Bryan is refusing any pity, which can be seen in this segment later in the night as he's in the ring and he says, "Last night, Roman Reigns, you won. You beat me, I lost. But that won't stop me, because I will never quit. My losses will only make me stronger, but I know I need to fight back, not only for me, but for all of you, to rid the Bloodline off the top of the mountain for good. And to do that, I need to get a win under my belt, a high-profile win above anything else. So come one, come all."
You think you know me?
Edge is here, and he's confronting a man he has a lot of intertwining history with alongside Reigns. He stands in the ring and says, "Bryan, I know you're feeling the feeling of loss, but you need to bounce back. And to do that, I'm gonna personally challenge you to a match, because not only do I want to see you at your best, but we both want one more chance at Roman Reigns. So what do you say?" I say yes, Edge. I'll face you at Backlash. What an announcement! Both men want the match, and Adam Pearce makes it official, but with one added stipulation, that the loser of the match can never challenge for the Universal Championship ever again, so long as Roman Reigns holds it. It's huge stakes! Both men have everything to lose. So can Bryan rebound and defeat a man he fought with in the past to attempt to take down the tribal chief? Well, they're going at it. Both men want to prove they deserve one more shot at Roman Reigns. But to do that, they have to put the other down, and although there's a lot of mutual respect between the two, they both know they can't go soft in this contest. And Edge even tries to hit a huge spear onto Bryan through the ropes, but he crashes and burns. Bryan has an opening, he nails a knee onto the worn down Edge, he then throws him into the ring, and he's calling the Rated R Superstar to his feet for a running knee. But can he connect? Yes, he does. Edge is out. Can Bryan pick up the win? No. Edge, out of sheer desperation, kicks out, but he has nothing left, and Bryan knows it. He calls an almost lifeless Edge to his feet once more and plants him with another knee. Bryan has done it. He rebounds from his loss a month prior and keeps his dreams alive. But one man refuses for this to be the case, as just before his match against the new WWE Champion Cody Rhodes, Brock Lesnar assaults Daniel Bryan before tossing him out the ring. But why did he do this? Well, on the following night of Raw, Bryan isn't in the building, but Lesnar is. He comes out and explains himself as he says, "Bryan, you think you deserve another shot at Roman Reigns? You've never even beaten me, yet you think you can just get another opportunity just because you beat some old has-been? No! I won't let that happen. I know you aren't technically a #1 contender, but just know you will never be again until you make me tap or keep me down for a free count." It's stern words from Brock as he continues with him saying, "So I guess this is another challenge for you, Bryan. You're used to them, right? Because at Night of Champions, it's you versus me. And if anyone in the back has a problem with that, I'll take you on a trip to Suplex City." Lesnar lays down the law, but what will Bryan have to say about the challenge? Well, he doesn't need to answer verbally, as leading into Night of Champions, it's full-blown warfare between the pair. The only words Bryan speaks are when he gets separated from the Beast as he screams, "You wanna fight? Fine, we'll fight at Night of Champions and right my past wrongs when I beat you in the ring and then continue to prove why I'm one of the best professional wrestlers alive and why I'm the one who will dethrone Roman Reigns." It's passionate words from Bryan, but who will stand tall at Night of Champions? Because it's time for the second singles contest between Daniel Bryan and Brock Lesnar. And Lesnar, of course, dominates large sections of the match. But Bryan refuses to stay down, and both men eventually spill to the outside of the ring, although Lesnar continues to annihilate Bryan, but he wants to end Bryan's career once and for all, so he redecorates the announcer's table, but with one swift kick, Bryan puts Lesnar on the table, and he knows what he has to do to keep him down, as he hurls his body from the top rope, shattering the announcer's table alongside Lesnar, and Bryan just manages to get back into the ring. However, the referee counts Lesnar out. Bryan wins via a count out, which he is seemingly very disappointed in, as he walks to the back after the result is made official. And on the following night, Bryan is in a no more contenders match for the Money in the Bank ladder match between himself and Dirty Dominic Mysterio. And it seems he has a chip on his shoulder following him being unable to pin Brock Lesnar, as he's more vicious against poor Dom Dom, although he eventually relents and locks him in a yes lock to pick up the win. Bryan advances to Money in the Bank, although he isn't able to win the briefcase, as Brock returns and decimates the American Dragon with F5s and eventually carries the carcass to the back. And leading into the biggest party of the summer, the feud reaches its boiling point. They can't stay away from each other. They fight every time both men are in the same building. And on the go-home Raw before SummerSlam, the brawling continues with Brock eventually standing tall over the lifeless Bryan. But who can prevail at the biggest party of the summer? Well, both men are going at it. They're trading strikes. This feud has culminated in pure combat, although Bryan sends the Beast to the outside. And it's him this time who redecorates the announcer's table. And the roles completely reversed from their last match, as Lesnar plants Bryan with an F5. Then he hurls the corpse into the ring. However, Bryan gets a sudden burst of adrenaline as he nails in the Ultimate Beast. He then sprawls into the cover. One. No! Brock kicks out at one. Bryan is horrified, so he goes to look for another, but Lesnar picks him up. However, with a few key elbows to the side of the temple, Bryan gets an opening to nail another, and another, and with 3 running knees, Bryan puts the beastly demon to bed. And on the following night, Bryan is in the ring and says, "Last night, I finally conquered Brock Lesnar, but I still can't challenge Roman Reigns. I have to wait until the Royal Rumble match to get my last chance at Roman, so until then, I need to continue to prove why I deserve a shot at the chief whose tribe is crumbling under him. And I've talked to Adam Pearce, and he's told me to make it official, but at Payback, I'll be issuing an open challenge, because if I can't continue to fight day in and day out, if I can't train for the most important match of my life, then why would I bother?" It's a huge announcement by Bryan, but who will answer the open challenge? Well, at Payback, Bryan is patiently waiting for his opponent when Jimmy Uso brings a bloody Jey Uso out. Bryan is in shock, everyone is shocked, and Sikoa comes out of nowhere and nails a Samoan spike onto Bryan. It's an absolute disgrace by the Bloodline, but that's all Solo does. He spikes Bryan and leaves just like WrestleMania. Bryan is furious, and with his rage building and building, he leaves. And leading into Fastlane, it's chaos on all shows between the Bloodline and Daniel Bryan. But Solo Sikoa and Daniel Bryan's fighting continues to escalate to the point where both Adam Pearce and Nick Aldis decide that it needs to end at Fastlane. And to ensure it's a fair fight, it'll be no holds barred, which both men are very eager about. So it's time for Fastlane. Can Bryan get vengeance on Solo? Well, Solo Sikoa completely blindsides the leader of the S Movement during his entrance. And due to a no holds barred stipulation, the match officially begins, and Solo completely and utterly dominates. He swings a baseball bat over and over onto the body of Bryan. Sikoa is proving that Bryan may not be strong enough to finish his story. However, just as it's looking like Bryan is defeated, Jey Uso comes out. He's seen enough, but here comes Jimmy, and the brawl between the two brothers is on. And with Solo distracted, Bryan hits a running knee, although he knows he needs more. So he hits another, and another. Sikoa is done, but he's the reason why Bryan lost to the Tribal Chief at WrestleMania 39. So he applies applies a yes lock onto Sikoa. He refuses to let it go. He wants his revenge for what he did at WrestleMania and Extreme Rules, although eventually he does let it go, even though it's only because Jey Uso forced him to, and the two men have a tense stare down. Bryan is seemingly starting to join the dark side, and on the following night of Raw, Bryan kicks off the show and says, Jey, please come out, man. I need to say something to you. And Jey does. He stands in the ring with Bryan saying, last night, something snapped inside of me. The fact that I've been screwed time and time again by you and your family, I couldn't hold it back. I couldn't hold my anger back. And I'm sorry, not only to you, but to the entire WWE universe. When I step into the ring, I only want to prove I am the best. And after that second bell rings, that should be it. But in all fairness, I should be mad at you. After all, you were part of the reason my life became hell. But I can see in your eyes that you have changed for the better. I can see you are no longer corrupted. So I'm giving you the second chance that I'm going to ask for. Even if I don't deserve it, will you do the same for me? Can we put our history behind us and move forward against evil? And Jey responds, of course, man. I know what they've done to you. You had every right to do what you did. But at the end of the day, that's my family, Oos. And even if I hate my own blood, they are my blood, Oos. And if I can help it, I don't want any of my family to get hurt and have to sit on the sidelines. Thank you, Jey. It's a heartwarming segment between the pair. Bryan's anger subsides after getting his vengeance on Solo Sikoa, but he still needs revenge on Roman Reigns. But his revenge isn't to injure him, it's to take what he holds dearest to his heart, the Universal Championship. And from now, Bryan's story all the way until WrestleMania 40 is almost identical to Cody Rhodes' journey to his second match against Roman Reigns, aside from a very crucial plot point. That being that The Rock comes back and tries to talk Bryan out of challenging Reigns rather than immediately putting Bryan on the sidelines so then he can make his choice at the WrestleMania kickoff press conference, and the rest is history. Everything is the same, including the matches, and including Daniel Bryan finishing the story. So what's next for the leader of the S movement? Well, Daniel Bryan opens his SmackDown after WrestleMania with him saying, at WrestleMania, I finished my story against Roman Reigns, but now a new chapter must begin. And it starts with this championship. This belt doesn't represent me, it represents corruption. So I'm not going to be defending the Universal Championship any longer, because with the endorsement by Paul Levesque, I am bringing back the World Heavyweight Championship. This belt means honor. This belt means prestige. And I will be the catalyst for this championship. So when the main event, we'll find my first challenger for the World Heavyweight Championship, as I'll be an over-the-top rope battle royal with the winner fighting me at Backlash. It's a humongous announcement by Bryan, but who will prevail in the main event? Well, with Bryan watching on, it comes down to two. It's between Andrade and LA Knight. Everyone wants to see the megastar pick up the huge win. He's throwing strikes onto Andrade and he's on the ropes. He's gonna do it, but Andrade snuffs out his hopes and dreams and sends him out. No one can believe it. Andrade punches his ticket to face the American Dragon at Backlash. And the following week, Bryan and Cody Rhodes' timelines start to resemble one another, as Daniel Bryan takes on Melo Hayes in the main event of the show. But as it's looking like Bryan might put Melo away, Andrade pulls Bryan out of the ring and starts beating him down. It's an unbelievable heel turn from El Idolo. He wipes out Bryan, but why? Well, the following week, Andrade is in the ring and says, why are you guys booing me? Last week, Bryan, instead of focusing on his true threat for his championship, he decides to go after Melo Hayes. Now, is he the future? Perhaps, but I'm the present, and I let that be known last week when I knocked the American Dragon down a peg or two. So for Backlash, Bryan, I want you to focus on me, especially when I rip away the championship from you. It's stern words from Andrade, but he doesn't realize Bryan isn't in the back as he starts to batter Andrade, although he eventually gets out of the ring with Bryan saying, oh, don't you worry, you stuck-up no-good piece of shit. You are definitely now my sole focus, and when that bell rings at Backlash, you will feel my full wrath. But will his full wrath be enough? as the match is on at Backlash, and Bryan is dominating the early stages of the contest through his strikes, although with a well-timed shot, Andrade makes his way back into the contest, and he's showcasing why he deserves his position, why he deserves the main event. He's giving it his all, but his all can't keep Daniel Bryan down for the 3 count. Andrade's getting desperate, and even hits a humongous dive to the outside, but Bryan then hurls him into the barricade and nails a diving knee. He then puts him in the ring and lines him up for a running knee to put the match to sleep. However, as he's looking to hit it, Andrade tries to roll him up, but that doesn't work either. Bryan kicks out, and as both men get to their feet, Bryan finally connects with the knee. He's done it. He successfully defends the World Heavyweight Championship. But who will his next challenger be? Well, on the SmackDown after Backlash, Bryan is in the ring and cutting a promo celebrating his victory, although whilst he's talking, boom! Melo Hayes jumps him and starts beating him down. He hasn't forgotten about the fact that his previous match didn't conclude with Bryan, and he shows his rage. He wails on him with a sledgehammer over and over and over. It's becoming grotesque to watch. But after over a dozen sledgehammer shots, Melo stops. He's made his point, as after connecting a picture-perfect cutter, he leaves. And the following week, Melo Hayes opens the show and he says, "Last week, I reinserted myself back into the title picture because I was inches away from defeating the champ until my opportunity got ripped away from me." And Melo continues as he says, "So I guess this is a challenge to you, Bryan. A rematch. You and I competing in the main event of King and Queen of the Ring. How does that sound?" Melo lays down the challenge, but how will Daniel Bryan respond? Well, he doesn't. He's not in the building. He's still recovering from his injuries, but one man is in the building as the SmackDown general manager Nick Aldis storms out and says, "Melo, you're lucky I haven't suspended you and kicked you off my show, but there's money to be made here." And Daniel Bryan agrees. So at King and Queen of the Ring, when Bryan is 100% cleared to compete in the main event, it'll be you versus Daniel Bryan. Oh, and this time everyone is barred from ringside, so there will be a winner. It's an enormous announcement made by Aldis, but who will prevail at King and Queen of the Ring? Well, it's time for the main event of the show, and both competitors start the contest with some technical wrestling, showcasing their mat skills. However, Bryan starts to gain the upper hand due to his experience factor, as he executes a series of crisp strikes and submissions. But Melo Hayes fights back, he won't give up, and he uses his agility and high-flying maneuvers to his advantage, stunning Bryan with a jaw-dropping springboard. Thus, the momentum swings back and forth, with both wrestlers countering each other's signature offense. Neither man will let up, but Bryan locks in the yes lock, applying immense pressure onto Hayes. It's looking bleak for the man who calls himself him. But after a hard-fought struggle, Melo Hayes reaches the ropes, forcing a break, but Bryan is determined to secure the victory, so he continues the punishment and delivers a series of devastating kicks to Hayes. Hayes is almost done, so Bryan prepares for his finisher, the running knee. He's lining him up, and he connects with making Melo Hayes crash to the mat. Bryan goes for the cover, and with that, Bryan successfully defends his title once more. But what's next for the leader of the Yes Movement? Well, with AJ Styles' phenomenal fake retirement, Bryan's next feud is crystal clear, and it happens at Clash of the Castle with the same result as our timeline, with Bryan making Styles quit. But his next challenger immediately presents itself as the Bloodline dismantle Bryan, although with Randy Orton being on Raw in this timeline, no one comes to save him. So there's no one to save Bryan. He has to somehow survive the wrath of the entire new Bloodline. But Bryan has a plan. He talks to Nick Aldis, and it's made official that each week leading into the show, Bryan will face one member of the Bloodline, and if he defeats that member, they will be banned from ringside. So the first week he takes on Tama Tonga, and it's a clinical affair. Tama showcases how good he is in the ring, although after 15 minutes of unbelievable action, Bryan plants a knee on Tama Tonga to eliminate him from the matchup at Money in the Bank. And the following week, he does the same to Tonga Loa in his first singles match on the main roster. But Solo comes out following this match and says, "Now that you've been tested, your punishment will continue. Even though my family have failed, he won't." Jacob Fatu has debuted in WWE, and he makes an emphatic statement by putting Bryan through the announcer's table. But will Daniel Bryan have to acknowledge Solo Sikoa as the better performer at Money in the Bank? Well, the match is underway, and Sikoa is dominating. He's all over Bryan, but Bryan won't give up without a fight, so he nails strikes back onto Solo, as it's an even playing field. Neither man has the advantage, so here comes Jacob Fatu. He's gonna try and screw Bryan, but then Jimmy Uso is back, but that's not all. Reigns takes down Jacob Fatu. Solo is distracted. He can't believe it. And Bryan unbelievably rolls up Solo for the free. Everyone is stunned. And that emotion continues after the match as Gunther confronts Daniel Bryan, confirming his choice after winning the King of the Ring tournament. And leading into SummerSlam, due to Solo Sikoa being occupied by Roman Reigns, there are segments hyping up the rematch between the pair from 2 years ago at the same show, which had ended in a draw. There's no fighting needed, just two men talking about their love for professional wrestling, which can be seen in their go home segment, as Bryan says. Gunther, we both know each other's talents, and whilst I don't like you, I can respect you and your work, and your acknowledgement of how important this sport is. So at SummerSlam, we will get a definitive winner this time, and I wish you good luck. Likewise, Bryan. There's a gargantuan amount of respect between the pair, but he'll walk out of Cleveland as World Heavyweight Champion. While the bell rings, and just like their previous match, it's an absolute classic. Both men throw everything at each other to try and keep the other down for the free, but neither man will. But Bryan is relentless. He takes Gunther to the outside and starts stabbing into him like there's no tomorrow, but he knows he needs more, and looks to try and pick up the giant Austrian, but he's unable to, and Gunther takes full advantage. He hurls Bryan into the steps, and even throws him into a ring post from a fireman's carry position. Is Bryan done? Well, Gunther chucks him in the ring, but Bryan gets a second wind. He even manages to connect a running knee, and he sprawls into the cover, but that isn't enough. And Gunther retaliates with his own brutal offense. He powerbombs Bryan, but with all of his might, he jolts out the cover. What more can neither man do? Well, they're trading strikes, and Gunther clocks Bryan with a hellacious chop, which nearly breaks him in half, and then he locks in a crossface just to rub salt in the wound. Bryan is done, and he passes out. Gunther's reign of terror begins, whilst Bryan steps away from the spotlight, and even possibly retires after the greatest match in his entire career. And if you like this story, I think this might interest you.